Chapter 361, a negative customer review. A loud explosion echoed through the cave as Sakura's fist impacted the massive boulder blocking the entrance, smashing it into thousands of pieces. Yuna and a group walked into the cave, but Sazori and Deidara immediately blocked their path. While Sazori looked like a hunched-over monstrosity with a demon-looking giant mask on its back with a long metal tail protruding out of its mouth, Deidara was a normal-looking human with slanted eyes and long blonde hair that was covering his left eye. "You made me wait. I hate waiting." Yuna scoffed at Sasori's words and let her gaze wander over the cave. "You didn't have to wait for us. You could have just killed yourself immediately when you heard that I was coming here and saved all of us some time." Yuna's gaze stopped on Gaara, who was currently getting Shukaku extracted from him, and sighed in relief. As far as she could tell, the ritual was far from over, and they still had plenty of time to rescue him. "What arrogance! Let's see if you can still talk like that after I've shown you my art." "Sorry, but I really don't have that much interest in art except for very sophisticated stuff." Yuna could feel some burning gazes on her back but ignored them completely. "Well, as we previously discussed, you can have Blondie, Naruto." Without waiting any longer, Naruto shot towards Deidara, who smiled wildly while tossing a tiny clay bird into the air, which turned into a huge animated clay bird after a puff of smoke. He swiftly mounted the bird and moments later flew out of the cave, with Naruto following after him. "Ha ha ha, it seems like today is my lucky day, and I will have the chance to capture another Jinchuriki." Naruto rolled his eyes at Deidara's provocation while covering his whole body with a wind chakra armor, significantly increasing his speed. Honestly, there was minimal purpose in chasing down Deidara. After all, their goal was to rescue Gaara and not defeat all the enemies, but what else was Naruto supposed to do? If he tried to insert himself in the fight against Sazori as well, wouldn't Yuna accuse him of bullying the weak? Meanwhile, Yuna looked at the departing Deidara with a weird expression on her face. Somehow, his departing figure made her feel incredibly regretful. She felt like a huge opportunity just slipped through her fingers, but she couldn't tell why. As far as she knew, Deidara's primary technique was turning clay into explosives, and she simply didn't see how that could possibly interest her. While Yuna was pondering whether there was anything special about Deidara or not, Chie finished her explanation about Sazori, whose current form was only a puppet he wore as an armor and that the real him was inside of it. Although Yuna could understand the logic behind that, there was a bit of a flaw in that strategy as well. The most dangerous aspect about puppet masters was their poison combined with their puppet's unpredictable movements. If you were to put a human inside a puppet, its movements automatically become more predictable. Anyway, the fight started with Chie lifting up a chakra string with about 10 kunai attached to it, but Sazori blocked those by lazily moving his metal tail around. Then, he removed his face mask, revealing a grotesque puppet mouth that swiftly shot dozens of senbon needles at Karin, Sakura, and Chie, while his tail pierced towards Yuna at high speed. Sakura and Chie defended themselves against the needles by simply dodging out of the way, while Karin clapped her hands together, causing a thin blue sphere to form around her, which easily blocked what remained of the attack. Meanwhile, Yuna rolled her eyes at Sasori's attack and made ice cover her right hand. Clang. The sound of metal hitting something hard echoed through the cave as Yuna caught Sasori's attack with her ice-covered hand. "Oi, what are you doing, Sazori? Why are you aggroing enemies that are not here to fight you?" Crack. Yuna twisted her hand, tearing the top part of Sasori's tail off, making his eyes widen in surprise. He quickly retracted his tail to prevent Yuna from damaging it further and lifted up his left hand to shoot the cylinder that was attached to it towards his enemies. It exploded in midair, resulting in dozens of small containers spreading through the room, which exploded as well, resulting in thousands of poison needles flying everywhere, covering most of the battlefield. However, just like during his previous attack, Sakura and Chie avoided the attack by ideally moving their bodies through it, while Karin's chakra shield still stood firm. A bunch of tiny needles simply weren't enough to put a dent in it, no matter how many there were. On the other hand, Yuna was a little bit further away from the blast zone, so only very few Senbon needles actually reached her, and those that did, she casually fished out of midair and tossed them aside. Sazori couldn't help but be bewildered by what he just saw. Although he was a little surprised by Karen's shield, that didn't bother him too much, and neither did the fact that Yuna could get out of his attack without a scratch, simply due to being further away. However, he couldn't comprehend how someone as young as Sakura could see through such a complex attack and get out of it scot-free. He squinted his eyes and realized what was going on moments later. "I see, you used your strings to help the inexperienced breath through my attacks. A solid plan, Chia." However, slurp. A loud slurp echoed through the cave, confusing not only Sazori but also Sakura and Chia. Sasori's gaze wandered, and moments later, he saw the source of the slurping sound, which almost made him keel over. Yuna had cracked open the piece of tail she previously broke and had taken out a small glass vessel that stored poison inside the tail. She had taken a straw out of nowhere and was currently happily drinking the poison from the glass container. Sazori was just about to ask what in the world she was doing when a frown appeared on Yuna's face while she shook her head in dissatisfaction. She waved her hand, resulting in 2 small ice cubes forming, tossed them into the glass container, and took another sip. This time, she nodded in satisfaction. "Seriously, Sazori, your customer service is subpar. You are not even serving your drinks at an adequate temperature. What a poor performance." Eerie silence covered the battlefield as Sakura, Chia, and Sazori were looking at Yuna in absolute bewilderment. "What?" Boom. Sazori was just about to regain his power of speech when 4 chains entirely made out of chakra crashed into his puppet body, smashing it to pieces. "Ha ha ha, what a small fry. To think that an S-rank shinobi could be distracted by something as simple as someone voluntarily drinking deadly poison. How pathetic." Sakura and Chia's faces deadpanned at Karen's exclamation, while Yuna nodded in approval. "Indeed, I agree that a negative customer review can hit someone pretty hard, but there honestly is no point in freezing up like that. Yes, that was definitely why he froze up, and it had nothing to do with you slurping the supposedly deadly poison he created like a cocktail. Yes, I agree. Besides, if he doesn't want me to drink it like a cocktail, he shouldn't have made it taste like one." "Did that really taste like a cocktail?" "A little. Especially after I put the ice cubes in. Well, we are talking about a cocktail that is at least 180 proof, so there is that." "What kind of cocktail is over 180 proof?" The good ones. If the first sip doesn't feel like someone smashed a sledgehammer against your head, can it even be called a cocktail? Ugh, this is another one of those cultivator things, huh? Huh? It is? Chapter 362, Fighting Deidara Part 1. Meanwhile, Naruto was chasing after the still-flying Deidara with an annoyed expression on his face. He noticed another batch of animated clay spiders coming at him and dodged them with practiced ease. Moments later, said spiders exploded a few meters behind him, missing him completely. "This is so annoying. Where does he get all these clay figures from? Although I can't see it properly from down here, he barely moves his hands, so I don't believe he makes them on the spot. Does he have a storage seal filled with clay statuettes or something like that? Oi, Blondie, for how long do you plan on running away? This is getting boring." Deidara sneered at Naruto's question and took out a few more clay figurines, tossing them at Naruto. "Well, I'm quite satisfied with the current situation. I can freely attack you while you can't do anything about it. I see no reason to break the status quo." "Wait, seriously? I thought you wanted to lure me into some kind of trap, so I obediently followed you around. Since you didn't have a proper plan from the beginning, I might as well have directly shot you down." Deidara's sneer widened when he heard Naruto's words. "Oh? You think you can shoot me down when I'm this FA? Before Deidara could finish speaking, his mouth closed shut as he noticed the ungodly amounts of chakra Naruto was currently gathering. Oi, what in th? Wind style, thousand wind blade gale. Deidara's eyes bulged out when he saw the massive storm of razor-sharp wind blades shooting towards him. Without a moment of hesitation, he jumped off of his mount and controlled it to fly into the storm, where he swiftly exploded it, weakening the storm a little. This gave him just enough time to weave a few hand signs before the storm reached him and cut his body into thousands of pieces. Instead of being happy about that, a frown appeared on Naruto's face as he did not believe that an S-rank shinobi would go down so quickly. As if Deidara wanted to confirm Naruto's guess, two clay snakes burst out of the ground and swiftly entangled Naruto. Unfortunately, Naruto was still surrounded by his wind armor, so the snakes were ground into dust. Despite being destroyed, the shredded parts started glowing, and moments later, Naruto was engulfed by an explosion. Ha ha ha, how do you like my art? Deidara emerged out of the ground, revealing that his previously destroyed body was nothing but a clay clone, and immediately started mocking Naruto. However, Deidara's mocking laughter got stuck in his throat when Naruto casually walked out of the dust cloud produced by the explosion without a single singe on his body and while mockingly dusting his clothes. Well, that had about 3 standard explosive tags worth of power. Sorry, but that is far from enough to penetrate my wind armor. Deidara's face grew solemn when he realized that this fight would be far from as easy as he expected. Very good, it seems like I will be able to show you more of my art. Since C1 didn't show any effect at all, I might as well skip directly to C3. Deidara's hands vanished into the 2 bags he had by his sides, and moments later, loud chewing noise was heard, confusing Naruto. No idea what C1 or C3 means, but I guess that is the strength of his explosives. Where in the world is that chewing noise coming from? Naruto glanced round the battlefield and moments later, his gaze landed on Deidara's bags that still had his hands inside of them. No way. The chewing stopped and Deidara took his hands out of his clay bags. It can't be true. Then, he revealed the palm of his hands, each of which had a mouth on them. You have got to be joking. Then, the mouths opened, revealing 2 tongues with an expertly crafted miniature figure of a dragon on each of them. He formed those figures with the mouths he had in his hands. Let me show you the power of my art. Just how dexterous are the tongues of those hand mouths? An awkward silence covered the battlefield after Naruto's outburst, which was broken after Naruto uttered a slight cough. Sorry about that. I was just a little bit surprised by the skillful display of your art. So, please go ahead and do your thing, hand blowjob. A tick mark appeared on Deidara's forehead when he heard Naruto's nickname for him, and moments later, his anger exploded as the 2 miniature-sized dragons grew huge and started flying, with Deidara sitting on top of one of them. You will pay for mocking me like this. The tails of the 2 dragons grew 1 segment shorter as they opened their mouths, revealing dozens of bird-like statues that were swiftly launched towards Naruto. Geez, what are you so angry for? I think that nickname is rather fitting. Naruto lifted his right hand, causing a small chakra sphere to appear on it, which quickly grew in size. While growing, 4 shuriken-like protrusions grew at the sides of the chakra ball, but moments later, it started destabilizing, causing Naruto to frown. Still can't do it one-handed, huh? His other hand rose as well and was quickly placed close to the ever-growing chakra ball, stabilizing it instantly, and moments later, he threw it towards Deidara. Wind style, Rasen Shuriken. Naruto's jutsu cleaved through the approaching swarm of flying explosives like they were made out of paper, and before Deidara could react, it appeared in front of the dragon he was riding and crashed into it. Deidara immediately realized he was in trouble and instantly abandoned the dragon he was riding and jumped towards the other. Meanwhile, the Rasen Shuriken exploded, creating a massive sphere of rampaging miniature wind blades that instantly shredded the dragon and the surrounding explosive clay birds into pieces. At first, Deidara believed he was out of the blast zone. However, he quickly realized that Naruto's jutsu was still expanding, so he promptly created another tiny clay spider and immediately detonated it in front of him, blasting him further away from Naruto's attack radius. Although his desperate move managed to save him from Naruto's attack, blasting himself away with his own explosion resulted in him having sunburn marks all over his body, which caused his anger to spike. "You bastard, I will make you pay for this." Frankly, he wanted to save what he was about to do for Itachi, but now he no longer cared about it. He would win this fight, even if it meant killing Naruto, which he was not supposed to do. "I will show you the power of my C4. Chapter 363, Fighting Deidara Part 2. As soon as he finished speaking, Deidara took out some more clay and started chewing on it with his regular mouth, resulting in Naruto giving him a weird outlook. Is it really necessary that he chews his clay before every single one of his attacks? Well, considering what we have seen so far, I would say yes, it is. Herg. The sound of someone emptying the contents of their stomach echoed over the forest, causing Naruto to look at Deidara with disgust. "You, that's nasty. Whatever he just created, I'm not letting it touch me." As soon as Naruto finished that thought, the clay Deidara just procured started moving, and a few seconds later, a giant figure of Deidara himself was created. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw a 50-meter-tall figure of Deidara as he prepared himself to teleport away instantly. "If that thing explodes as well, then I'm out of here." Moments later, the giant clay figure started bloating, causing Naruto to squint his eyes. That was totally different from the other explosives so far, which usually started glowing instead. Shortly after, the massive figure popped like a balloon instead of exploding, which made Naruto frown. His first thought was that Deidara's jutsu failed, but considering the mad grin on his face, Naruto very much doubted that. A calculative grin appeared on Naruto's face, which was replaced by a cocky smile before Deidara could notice his previous facial expression. "Hee, what is this? Failed your own jutsu, huh? How pitiful." Deidara's grin grew even wider when he heard Naruto's words as he clapped his hands together and formed the seal of confrontation. "Victory is mine. Out as a bang. Katsu." Moments later, every living being in the surroundings except for Deidara started crumbling away, which naturally included Naruto, who was frantically looking at his arms, legs, and body, which was slowly turning into dust until nothing remained of him. "Ha, that's right, die. Be consumed by millions of bombs you can't see and die." Moments later, Deidara took a few deep breaths before an annoyed expression appeared on his face. "Dan, I was not supposed to kill the Jinchuriki. Oh well, I frankly done." Massive Rasengan. Boon. A gigantic sphere of blue spinning chakra smashed into Deidara's back, resulting in him being flung away at high speed and, after crashing through a dozen of trees, crashing into the ground, producing a huge dust cloud. Meanwhile, Naruto landed on Deidara's clay dragon and drew a few seals on its back, resulting in it turning back to its original size and crashing to the ground. Surprisingly, Deidara managed to shakily get up from the ground, which caused Naruto to look at him in surprise. "Not bad, you managed to put a wall of clay between yourself and my attack just before I hit you, preventing quite a bit of damage." However, Deidara couldn't even hear Naruto's praise as he glared at him in hatred. How did you evade my art?" Naruto pondered for a moment whether he should explain himself or not and then decided just to do it. After all, wasn't it unfair that only villains were allowed to monologue? Pretty simple, actually. All attacks you used so far worked on the same principle. You infused your clay with your chakra and then used the connection generated through that to detonate them remotely. So, I only had to make sure to get rid of the chakra inside the clay to make it harmless. In case you are wondering how I did that, I used my seals. You might have forgotten about it since I didn't use any seals in this fight so far, but I'm still considered as one of the most proficient seal masters of the elemental nations. In fact, I consider myself to be the second best, just after Minae-san. Deidara gritted his teeth in anger when he realized that Naruto had tricked him. The Naruto he saw dying was only a clone, which Naruto used to gauge whether his preventive measure would work. That meant that his outburst after seeing Naruto die was precisely what he was waiting for. Naruto saw Deidara's anger spike, and a mocking grin appeared on his face. "Well, do you have any other cards to play, hand blowjob?" Deidara saw red when he heard Naruto mocking him again, resulting in Deidara tearing away the clothing covering his upper body, revealing what appeared to be a stitched wound on his chest. Then, he used one of his hand mouths to tear away the stitches, revealing yet another mouth on his chest. Damn it, just how many mouths do you have? Do you want to break some messed up world record? Deidara ignored Naruto's words as he swiftly started feeding clay to the mouth in his chest. Very well, I have had enough of this mockery. I will show you my ultimate art. Behold my masterpiece. Self-destruction. I will turn my death itself into the ultimate form of art. Instead of panicking, Naruto had a slightly conflicted expression on his face as he noticed the black lines that started covering Deidara's body and seemed to compress him into a black ball. Ha ha ha, this blast will cover more than 10 kilometers. It's impossible for you to get away. Come on, show it to me. Show me your fear as you realize your inevitable death. Instead of showing his fear, Naruto's expression became even more awkward. Coffer. Oh no, how could I possibly travel the distance of 10 kilometers within an instant? As Naruto said that, he slowly took a three-pronged kunai out of his weapon holster. The silence was so heavy you could slice it with a knife as Deidara looked at the kunai in Naruto's head with crimson red eyes. Coffer, sorry for destroying the mood. FCKU, Naruto Uzumaki. Boom. A few minutes after the aftermath of the heavy explosion settled down, Naruto reappeared at the now devastated battlefield with a wry smile on her face. Geez, he didn't have to curse me like that. How rude. Isn't it his own fault for forgetting about my ability to teleport? Isn't the only reason he forgot about it because he lost himself in his anger due to you constantly mocking him? Now, that's just unreasonable, Kurama. I didn't mock him that much. Pretty sure that nickname alone brought him over the edge. MHHH, really? I thought it fit him rather well, though. I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter whether it's a good fit or not. Is that so? Oh well, he's dead now, so I guess it doesn't matter anymore. Naruto was just about to teleport back to Yuna when he saw something sparkling in the crater Deidara left behind. Oh? Is there still something left of him after that explosion? After searching for a short moment, Naruto managed to dig up a teal-colored ring, which caused him to tilt his head in confusion. How in the world did a ring of all things survive that explosion? Naruto inspected the ring a bit further and noticed that there were actually seals engraved into it, which immediately sparked his interest. After analyzing it for a while, a wide grin appeared on Naruto's face as he put the ring on his right index finger. Hee, let's have some fun with this tilde. Chapter 364, Against Sasori Part 1. Moments after Karen smashed apart Sasori's puppet armor, a figure jumped out of the smashed parts, causing Chiyo's eyes to widen in shock. That figure had spiky red hair and grayish-brown eyes with a facial expression that showed no emotions. This was Sasori's real body. Surprisingly, he didn't seem to have aged a single day since Chiyo last saw him. However, before she could comment any further on that, Sasori took out a scroll and unfurled it, revealing the kanji for 3 written on it. Then, with a puff of smoke, a new puppet appeared. T3rd Keisuke-sama. Yet again, Chiyo was surprised due to the puppet looking very similar to the 3rd Keisuke, but before she could comment any further on that, blades shot out from the puppet's right arm as the puppet approached Karen at high speed. Karen saw the poison gleaming on the blades and immediately jumped backward. However, the Kazekage puppet was faster than her and still managed to reach Karen, who swiftly moved her chains to block the blades. A loud clang echoed through the cave as the blade-filled arm was blocked by Karen's chains, which immediately started entangling the arm. Sakura appeared next to the puppet and punched towards it in an attempt to destroy it while Karen was stopping it from retreating, but the blades detached themselves from its arm, allowing it to slip away. Meanwhile, Chia took out 2 scrolls as well, and moments later, 2 puppets were floating next to her, which both had some resemblance to Sasori. Although Sasori's face was still unmoving, there was clearly some annoyance in his voice when he started speaking. "The first puppets I created and which I made to resemble my parents, huh? Do you really think you can face me with tools I myself created? We'll see about that. You don't really believe that I left them unchanged and didn't add anything new, did you?" Sasori scoffed at Chia's words, and after a few finger twitches, his puppet's mouth opened up, allowing black iron sand to flow out of it. "Those 2 puppets you are using are mere copies made to resemble humans, but this one is the real thing. I made it out of the 3rd Kazekage body, and as such, it can use his signature jutsu. His iron sand. I call it human puppet." Chiyo's face became solemn when she saw the iron sand move and immediately spoke to Karen and Sakura. "Be careful, he can freely move the iron sand and shape it however he wants. Additionally, immediately discard everything you carry with you since he can control those things as well." Luckily, neither Karen nor Sakura used metallic equipment. Usually, Karen used her seals and chakra chains to fight, while Sakura specialized in taijutsu. While Chiyo was explaining the 3rd Kazekage jutsu, Sasori made his move as hundreds of small sand clumps started hovering around his puppet. Iron sand drizzle. A barrage of iron sand projectiles was shot at Karen, Sakura, and Chiyo. Like the previous few times, Karen was surrounded by a chakra sphere, but this time, it actually started destabilizing as soon as the first projectiles impacted it, causing a frown to appear on her face as she began to enhance it with more seals. On the other hand, Chiyo moved one of her puppets in front of her and made it lift its arms towards the incoming storm, causing a chakra shield to raise in front of Chiyo. Meanwhile, Sakura chose a less elegant option as she simply smashed her fist into the ground, resulting in a huge stone formation raising in front of her, blocking the sand. While Karen and Sakura overcame the attack without a scratch, Chiyo's puppet was heavily damaged due to the iron sand seeping into its joints, demonstrating why it was so dangerous. "Oh, all of you managed to get out of that without a scratch, how impressive." Although Sasori's words may sound like praise, considering his face still showed no motions, it could only be seen as mockery. Then, the iron sand started moving yet again, but it formed into a gigantic cube and an equally gigantic pyramid this time. Although it only showed for a split second, a smirk appeared on Karen's face when she saw the much bigger targets. Karen immediately jumped back to return the vanguard position back to Sakura, who was slightly surprised by her action but assumed that Karen was plotting something. The pyramid shot towards Sakura, but she dodged it by jumping backward. However, while she was jumping, the huge cube flew towards the spot she wanted to land on to crush her as soon as she arrived. Sakura wasn't worried in the slightest as she felt the familiar tug of chakra strings taking control of her body, slightly shifting her trajectory in midair so the cube would barely miss her. While jumping backward, Sakura started gathering chakra into her fist, and as soon as she landed next to the cube, she smashed her fist into it, resulting in it crashing against a wall and embedding itself inside it. Before Sasori could comment on that inhuman display of power, Karen landed on the cube with a smirk on her face. Her 4 chains entangled the cube to stop it from moving while her hands moved at lightning speed, engraving hundreds of seals into the cube within seconds. Sasori wanted the iron sand cube to move away from Karen or at least split it up into smaller parts, but the more seals Karen drew, the less control he had over it. So, he made the pyramid dissolve back into iron sand and shot another barrage of sand projectiles at Karen, who continued drawing seals as if she didn't even notice the attack. Chiyo appeared in front of Karen, and just like her puppet previously did, she lifted her hand, causing a chakra shield to raise again while showing off that she had turned her right arm into an artificial one. I have no clue what you are doing, but this should be worth it, right? A smoke appeared on Karen's face as she finished drawing seals and started injecting chakra into her creation. Naturally. Uzumaki sealing style, magnetic enhancement. The whole cube started glowing, and moments later, Sasori noticed that he had lost control of the iron sand. Additionally, all the iron sand and even the metal weapons in close vicinity to the cube were pulled towards it. Well, this will only stay active for a short while, so let's finish off the Kazekage puppet while all his iron sand is trapped. Sakura and Chiyo looked at the iron cube that now looked like a weird work of art due to all kinds of things sticking to it with fascination before they nodded their head in agreement and refocused their attention on Sasori. Meanwhile, Sasori inwardly frowned when he saw one of his greatest masterpieces being disabled so easily. Although he could still use the Kazekage puppet, what was the point in doing so when its most significant advantage was gone? So, he put it back into its storage scroll and removed his coat without any hesitation. Very well, it has been a long time since I used myself. Karen, Sakura, and Chiyo couldn't help but look at Sasori's body in bewilderment. Although Karen and Sakura already found it slightly weird that Chiyo turned one of her arms into a puppet, it seems like Sasori took an even more extreme approach. Why you actually turned yourself into a puppet, Sasori? Chapter 365, Against Sasori Part 2. Sakura hid herself behind a boulder as a powerful fire stream was sent out of Sasori's hands. Simultaneously, Karen's chakra chains shot towards Sasori, which he dodged by stabbing the metal cable stored inside his stomach area into the ground and using it to push himself away. While he was dodging, Chiyo's two puppets approached him and slashed at him with the blades that came out of their hands. Sasori blocked these two attacks with the two additional bladed hands he put on his puppet body. While retreating, he pointed the palms of his hands at Chiyo's two puppets, resulting in two thin water beams slicing them in half horizontally. Sasori's 2 feet touched the ground, and as soon as they did, the ground in a radius of about 2 meters around him started glowing. Sasori was shocked by that sudden development and confirmed that he somehow landed inside a complex arrangement of seals with a quick glance. He wanted to leave the glowing circle of seals as soon as possible, but before he could do so, the seals fully activated, disturbing the movement of his chakra for a short moment. If he were a normal shinobi, something like this would at best leave him slightly disorientated, but he modified himself to be a puppet, and only a small part of him was still human, so, unlike normal humans, his whole body moved through a chakra alone. As such, as soon as the seal activated, his whole body became unresponsive, and not even a second later, a fist smashed into his side, causing his puppet body to disassemble itself. The assailant, Sakura, frowned when she saw that instead of shattering, Sasori's puppet only split itself into parts while the part she punched only had a few cracks in it. Somehow, she didn't think that that was enough to kill Sasori. Moments later, the scattered parts started moving, and as if nothing happened to it, Sasori's puppet body reassembled itself. If his face allowed facial features, then Sasori would have a deep frown on his face. Since Chiyo was here, he didn't expect this to be an easy fight from the start, but he didn't expect that Chiyo would not be the most troublesome enemy. Karen's seals caught him completely off guard again and again. He had never fought against someone who used seals during battle. Isn't that little girl a little too troublesome? How in the world does she know 2 sealing techniques that counter me so perfectly? I could still understand the first one since increasing the magnetism of something could be helpful, but why would she bother to learn the second one? That one can pretty much only be used against me and would have almost no effect on everybody else. Is she a shinobi Konoha groomed just to counter me? No, that is impossible since no one knows about my full abilities. No, there is only one possible solution. She created them while we were fighting just to counter me. Kakuzu talked about the Uzumaki clan's affinity for seals, but this is simply ridiculous. Sasori finished his contemplation, and the atmosphere in the room immediately changed. Very well, this has been going on for longer than I wanted, so let's finish this. Sasori took out a huge scroll while removing a small cover on his chest. He injected chakra into the scroll, resulting in 100 puppets appearing in midair, and moments later, the same amount of chakra strings shot out of his open chest compartment and connected themselves with the puppets. I once took out a country with these, so let's see what you can do. Red secret technique, performance of 100 puppets. The trio's faces grew solemn when they saw the horde of puppets hovering around Sasori, and without a moment of hesitation, Chia took out a huge scroll as well. Just like Sasori, she injected her chakra into it, but unlike Sasori, only 10 puppets appeared, which were connected with the chakra string to her fingers, 1 finger per puppet. White secret technique, the Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets. Meanwhile, Karen lifted up her shirt, revealing a heavily decorated Uzumaki client symbol that was drawn on her stomach. The 5 fingers on her right hand started glowing, and after pressing them against her stomach, she twisted her hand counterclockwise, causing the seal on her stomach to spin. The seal unfurled itself, and moments later, her whole body was covered in seals, while the skin around her eyes turned black, and a dense cloak of blue chakra covered her body. Uzumaki sealing style, seal armor. A shiver went through Karen's body when she felt Yuna's glare on her for not using the full name of the technique. Oh no, I forgot the technique's full name, and Yuna-sama noticed it. It seems like I will be punished as soon as we are back in Konoha. Karen quickly wiped away the drool that was about to spill out of her mouth and focused her attention on Sasori. At the same time, Sakura clenched and unclenched her fists. She didn't have any fancy final moves she could use. Moments later, a puppet massacre started. Sasori's puppet army might look imposing, but it clearly favored quantity over quality. This, and the fact that Sasori couldn't control them, made them pretty easy picking. But Sasori was constantly taking out more puppets to keep the number at 100, turning this into a fight of attrition. On the other hand, Chia's 10 puppets were all considered masterpieces created by Monzaemon Chikamatsu, the inventor of the puppet technique. They were not only powerful individually but were literally made to be used simultaneously, and even had multiple techniques that incorporated more than one puppet. At the same time, Sakura had some difficulties but could still keep going. Unlike Yuna and Itachi's absurd speed, she could easily follow the puppet's movement. Tsunade put heavy emphasis on learning how to dodge during her training, so she was only hit a few times, and those hits only resulted in a few small scratches. Naturally, all of Sasori's weapons were doused in poison, but since Sakura had already analyzed the poison while they were in Suna, she had the antidote with her. Meanwhile, Karen was going utterly berserk on those poor puppets. None of them had enough firepower to puncture through her chakra cloak, and her 4 chakra chains tore dozens of puppets apart with every single swing. The combination of her chakra cloak and her chains made her pretty much unbeatable in a fight against a large horde of weak opponents, which was demonstrated rather spectacularly in this fight. Despite fighting against the last card of an S-rank shinobi, she was under almost no pressure and was utterly crushing her enemy. Naturally, Sasori noticed that as well, so while Karen was distracted with smashing his puppets, he shot the metal cable that was rolled up in his stomach compartment at her. Unlike the attacks of the other puppets, it managed to pierce through her chakra cloak and stabbed into her shoulder. Karen. Naturally, Sakura was shocked by that sudden development. After all, as far as she could tell, Karen was the most relaxed during the current stage of the fight. So, Sakura immediately ran towards Karen to give her medical treatment. But, damn it, Yuna-sama is the only one who is allowed to penetrate me. Before she could reach her, Karen uttered those words, causing Sakura to slip and smack face first into the ground. Although Karen had a pained expression on her face, that was quickly replaced by a ferocious smile as she firmly grasped the metal cable piercing through her shoulder. Besides that, I finally got my hands on your real body, so checkmate. Before Sasori could figure out what Karen was talking about, the seals on Karen's body started glowing and rearranging themselves. Although Sasori had no idea what Karen was doing, he tried to retract his metal cable frantically, but Karen firmly held it in place. Moments later, the seals on Karen's body stopped moving for a second and then actually started seeping into Sasori's metal cable. Uzumaki's sealing style, chakra corruption. Sasori panicked when he saw the seals slowly crawling towards him, but he couldn't prevent it no matter what he did. His metal cable was not detachable and was simply too thick to be cut apart. Moments later, the seals reached his body, and he immediately understood that this was his loss. His army fell to the ground, literally, like puppets whose strings had been cut, while his body did the same. He did not understand what Karen did precisely, but what he knew was that he could no longer control his chakra. Stab the part that has Sasori written on it. I currently can't move. Sakura heard Karen's command and swiftly changed directions from Karen to Sasori and, while running, picked up one of the discarded weapons on the ground and pierced it through Sasori's core, the only part of him that was still human. Chapter 366, Naruto joins Akatsuki. Sasori looked at the blade piercing through his core in disbelief. Although he didn't consider himself to be in an advantageous position during the fight, he never expected to be defeated so abruptly. He turned his gaze away from his pierced core and directed it at Karen instead. By now, she had pulled his metal cable out of her shoulder while her seal armor returned to how it initially looked. Additionally, the hole in her shoulder was healing rapidly due to the chakra armor still engulfing her. It was far from the speed at which Kurama's chakra could heal Yuna or Naruto, but it was still faster than conventional medical jutsu. What did you do to me? How did you stop me from moving? Karen lightly moved her almost healed shoulder with an uncomfortable expression on her face and answered Sasori's inquiry. Basically, I injected my own chakra into your chakra stream to prevent yours from moving. Doing that to an average shinobi is practically impossible unless I am significantly more powerful than them, but it works out just fine against someone whose body is mostly artificial. Sasori pondered Karen's words for a short moment before nodding his head in understanding. I see, so my immortal body was my undoing, huh? How ironic. You appear to be rather relaxed considering how your life is about to fade away. Sasori looked at Sakura and shrugged his shoulders in indifference after she finished speaking. It does not matter. I feel no pain nor regret about my death. I myself have killed thousands of people, and all those deaths were just as meaningless as my own. Sakura couldn't help but get angry at how easily Sasori dismisses a human life. Do you not know the worth of a human life? Sasori chuckled in amusement when he heard Sakura's question. Of course I do. Who do you think I am? I can easily tell you how much it costs to have someone take a human life. And I can tell you how much it costs to turn that human into one of my masterpieces as well. Sakura wanted to continue arguing that that was not what she was talking about, but before she could do so, Karen's hand landed on her shoulder and stopped her. There is no point in arguing with him, Sakura. The way he thinks is his own flavor of insanity he adopted to deal with a life filled with death. Sasori tilted his head to the side when he heard Karen's words. Insanity? MHH, I never considered myself to be insane, but I can somewhat see where you are coming from. Too bad, it seems I do have one regret now. Oh? Do tell. Sasori's head moved and looked Karen straight in the eyes with quite a bit of intensity. I would have loved to add you to my collection. Well, thanks, I guess, but Yuna-sama is the only one who is allowed to mess up my body. Sasori turned his gaze towards Yuna instead, who was still treating his poison as a cocktail. I see, insanity. Meanwhile, Yuna wasn't simply idling around. While Karen, Sakura, and Chio were fighting Sasori, she made an ice clone and sent it deeper into the cave to look for Gaara. Now that the fight was over, she exchanged places with her clone, who was about to enter the sealing chamber. Sai, why do you people insist on placing that ugly-ass statue into your meeting room? Immediately, all eyes in the room landed on Yuna, causing her to chuckle in amusement due to all the different emotions she saw in them. Anger, fear, hatred, apprehension, she noticed all of them. Yuna Uzumaki, why do you constantly insist on getting in the way of peace? Yuna almost laughed out loud when she heard Pain's words. Peace? It seems like we have very different views regarding what is considered peace. For example, unleashing a crazy terrorist that loves blowing things up on Suna is not something I would consider peaceful. Those are the necessary sacrifices to achieve peace. Only through pain can the world know true peace. Ah, I see, so you are the for the greater good kind of person, huh? Oh well, it honestly doesn't matter. Are you going to stop this ritual by yourself, or do I have to make a move? Pain was about to answer Yuna when an additional transparent figure appeared in the room, causing Pain to smile a little. Ah, I see, so you let your comrades fight Deidara and Sazori and went ahead by yourself. It seems like your comrades failed. Finally, you shall know what Pain I. Look, Nei-san, I joined Akatsuki, ha ha ha. The room's atmosphere became so awkward that Yuna could practically taste Pain's embarrassment. He only saw the blonde hair and the Akatsuki cloak out of the corner of his eyes, so he assumed the new arrival would be Deidara, but that was obviously not the case. Ooh, so shameful. Naturally, Yuna was nothing but willing to point that out, to crank the shame factor up some more. Since when did you know what shame is? MMPH, just because I don't have it doesn't mean that I don't recognize it. On a totally unrelated note, that situation was shameful, right? It was. Haha, of course it was. I totally knew that. Yuna finished her batter with Kurama and put on a stern expression. Naruto, I do not approve of you joining Akatsuki. They treat their workers horribly, and the only benefit they dish out is an unlimited supply of those tacky clerks. A sad pout appeared on Naruto's face when he heard Yuna's words. Don't be like that, Nei-san. Doesn't the cloak look pretty cool? That is beside the point, Naruto. I will not allow my little brother to work in a black company like this. But Nei-san, Enough. While Yuna and Naruto were going through their comedy routine, Pain regained his bearing and stopped their conversation with an angry shout. I will not permit you to mock me any longer. As soon as the time is ripe, I will come for you, and then you will experience what it means to defy God. I will show you Pain. As soon as he finished his rant, Pain cut the connection, and his transparent image disappeared, leaving an awkward silence behind. The other members cut their connections a few moments later, leaving only Yuna, Naruto, and the unconscious Gaara behind. Yuna's face contorted in mockery after she digested Pain's words. Pain. What does a little baby like you know about pain? Maybe I should teach him what true pain is. When Naruto saw Yuna's facial expression, he immediately cut the connection as well. Some things he would rather not know about, after all. Chapter 367, The End. Damn it. Shit, shit. Again and again and again. Every time that damn monster is involved, our plans fail. Currently, Black Zetsu was cursing up a storm, the reason being rather obvious. No, I need to calm down. It's not as bad as it seems. Although losing 2 members is pretty bad, we at least managed to get some of the Ichibi's chakra. It's not like we need all of its chakra to resurrect the Jubi. Zetsu started nervously pacing around the room while he was constantly muttering to himself, making it look like he was crazy. Okay, everything is fine. This will work out. No problem. We have at least some chakra from all the beasts up to and including the Nanabi, so only the Hachibai and the Kyuubi are missing. Zetsu nodded in approval at his own words and continued talking to himself. Kasame is currently hunting down the Hachibai, so only the Kyuubi is left. Meanwhile, Obito wants Itachi to fight Sasuke so that we can get our hands on an eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Yet again, Zetsu nodded in approval, but moments later, he started frantically scratching his head. Who cares about that? In the end, it all boils down to getting the Kyuubi's chakra, so we will have to confront her no matter what. The problem with that is that she can simply teleport away, even if we manage to corner her. We need to force her into a situation where she can't run away. Another tirade of curses left Zetsu's mouth before he calmed down again. We have no choice. We need to attack Konoha. Only when she has to defend Konoha can we guarantee that she won't run away. But will pain be enough to deal with her? Zetsu pondered his own question for a moment before shrugging his shoulders in indifference. It doesn't matter. Worst case scenario, he fails and I will have to grab his eyes stealthily before Yuna can get her hands on them. As long as we don't lose the Rinnegan, everything is fine. Zetsu thought about the next steps he wanted to take before nodding his head. Very well, let's see where this goes. If everything else fails, I will just have to conserve the Rinnegan while waiting for Yuna to die of old age. Meanwhile, Yuna returned to where Karen, Sakura, and Chiyo defeated Sasori while carrying an unconscious Gaara. She let her gaze wander over the destroyed puppets and stopped due to noticing something interesting. She bent down and picked up a puppet head with an amused expression on her face. Yo, we made it in time. Gaara is still alive. Yuna's words caused the trio to sigh in relief. Especially Chiyo, who had already prepared herself to exchange her own life to resurrect Gaara, was happy she didn't have to do that. By the way, are you interested in having a Sharingan, Sakura? As Yuna said that, she held up the head she had just picked up and revealed that it had 2 Sharingan in its eye sockets. Sasori sure was a perfectionist, huh? After all, the Sharingan is almost useless in the body of a puppet. Meanwhile, Sakura was stunned by Yuna's words. At the start of the mission, she was told that Sasuke was stronger than her due to his Sharingan, and now there was actually the possibility of having one. However, she somehow didn't think that was a good idea. Why don't you use it, Yuna? You are already very powerful, but that should increase your strength even more, right? Yuna chuckled in amusement at Sakura's probing question and crushed the puppet's head with her hand, destroying its 2 eyes in the process. Hee, you are a smart girl, Sakura. Indeed, why haven't I gotten myself a pair of Sharingan yet? I killed Danza, who had 11 of them, and I do not doubt that I could get one from the black market with the Uzumaki clan's resources either. Heck, there were dozens of them stored away inside Danza's bases. Sakura couldn't help but get slightly uncomfortable when she imagined an old man storing dozens of eyes all over his house, but Yuna nonetheless continued talking. So, there are actually 2 different reasons why you shouldn't do it and why I won't do it. You shouldn't do it simply because you don't have the necessary chakra to support 2 Sharingans. Just look at Kakasha, that man has only one and had a lot of time to learn how to use it adequately and still faints after half his fights. The Sharingan is really not that great if used by a non-Uchiha. Sakura nodded her head in understanding. Kakasha's situation was actually the main reason why she didn't want to implant it. As for why I don't want to have the Sharingan, I would rather not have any foreign objects implanted into my body. I already have something that doesn't belong to me sealed inside me, so exchanging my eyes would definitely bring my body even further out of balance. Oh? Do you mean that you couldn't cultivate if you were to get someone else's eyes? Yes. By now, you and I are almost perfectly in balance, and if I were to toss another variable into the mix, that balance would definitely be messed up again. I have no clue how far back that would throw me, but it would definitely cost me some time, which I'm unwilling to invest. Besides that, if I really wanted the Sharingan so badly, I would try to get the bloodline itself and not just the eyes. What's the point of having eyes that are not compatible with you? That's true, I guess. A few minutes after Yuna's explanation, Naruto re-entered the cave with a solemn facial expression which immediately brought the mood back down. No one could understand why Naruto had such a severe facial expression despite succeeding in the mission. Without a single word, Naruto walked towards Yuna and bowed his head. "I'm sorry, Nei-san." Naturally, Yuna had no idea what Naruto was apologizing for, so she could only tilt her head in confusion. "What are you apologizing for, Enei?" "My opponent had a mouth in each of his hands." "Gah." Yuna made a noise like someone just punched her in the stomach and staggered back a step. Damn it, the potential for jerks is basically endless. Yuna shook her head to get over the missed opportunity and looked at the still bowing Naruto in amusement. "Well, isn't it fine, Naruto? I might have missed an opportunity to make some good jerks, but it's not th. The mouths had tongues." "Gah." Yuna staggered back a little further and looked at Naruto in disbelief. She swept away the trickle of blood that was flowing down from the corner of her mouth and took a few deep breaths to calm down. No problem, Naruto. Haha, and no big deal, eh? The tongues were dexterous enough to create small animal figures. Gah, cough. Yuna fell on her knees while coughing out some blood. In no way, to think such a perfect specimen existed, and I missed him. I truly regret it. There was another mouth in his chest. Cough. Yuna's eyes became empty and lifeless as she coughed out some more blood. To think I of all people would die of regret. Yuna's unfocused eyes turned in Naruto's direction as she started speaking again, her voice filled with sadness and regret. Naruto, tell my harem I love them." After she finished speaking, Yuna collapsed to the ground. Naruto quickly approached her unmoving body and cradled her to his chest. Tears were streaming out of his eyes as he tilted his head back and opened his mouth. "Nesan. Well, that's the end of my story. I hope you enjoyed it, smiley face." Chapter 368, Another Reincarnation. Meanwhile, Karen, Sakura and Chie looked at Yuna and Naruto's performance in bewilderment. They had no clue how Yuna and Naruto came up with that kind of play on the fly, nor how they could act it out so easily. Well, the fact that Yuna really felt regret over not facing Deidara certainly made the performance more believable. Additionally, Yuna and Naruto have been messing around with people for a long time now, so their coordination and understanding of each other was pretty much perfect as well. What surprised Sakura and Chie the most was how believable Yuna's death appeared to be if they were to ignore the cause of death. The way her face became pale while coughing out blood and the slow unfocusing of her eyes all seemed to be authentic. What a freak! Not only is her strength absolutely ridiculous, even her acting is top-notch. With that kind of acting, she can probably even take infiltration missions. Who in the world has ever heard of a Jinchuriki that could do things subtly? Chie shook her head to get rid of her idle thoughts. After all, Suna and Konoha were allies, so there was no point in fearing Yuna's abilities right now. Unlike the previous alliance, this one was significantly firmer, and the Hokage, Kasuke, and Mizuki were even friends that could drink together. For a shinobi, getting drunk in front of someone from another village was a significant sign of trust, so Chie wasn't worried about the alliance breaking. A few moments later, Yuna returned to the world of the living and said up. "Oh, I expected to reincarnate in another world, but to think I would reincarnate into exactly the same world and even into the very same body. Wait. Maybe this is a parallel world. Quickly, Naruto, tell me if I'm still the most outstanding beauty that has ever walked the nation." Without a second of hesitation, Naruto eagerly nodded his head. "Don't worry, Nei-san. Your shamelessness and narcissism are still utterly unmatched." Yuna wiped the non-existent sweat from her forehead before she nodded in approval. "Phew, that's good. I really wouldn't know what to do if I had lost my nation-shaking beauty." "Ha ha ha, what are you saying, Nei-san? How could there possibly be someone as shameless as you?" Yet again, Yuna nodded in approval at Naruto's words. That's true, I guess. No matter what world or realm, my beauty is unmatched. Meanwhile, Karen, Sakura, and Chiyo stared at the duo, who somehow talked without paying any attention to each other's words with blank faces. They really wanted to comment on Yuna and Naruto's conversation, but was there even a point in doing so? It seems like neither Yuna nor Naruto were paying any attention to the words that were spoken at all, and the trio doubted that it would be any different if they tried to intervene in the conversation. A while later, a small groan escaped Gaara's mouth as he slowly opened his eyes and immediately made eye contact with a pair of purple eyes boring down on him. Gaara couldn't help but shiver due to the intensity of the gaze he was receiving. So, could you tell me why you decided not to take my kunai with you before you ran off to get yourself captured by Akatsuki, Gaara? Another shiver went through Gaara's body as he awkwardly averted his eyes from Yuna. I had no time to grab it. When I noticed the invader, he was already throwing bombs into the village, so I had to move immediately. Who tilde is that so? And despite fighting for some time, there was not a single opportunity to send a clone to grab it for you, huh? See, correct. Is that so? I see. But somehow I can't believe that to be true, Gaara. Gaara wiped away some sweat from his forehead while desperately trying and failing to keep eye contact with Yuna. Somehow, the whole conversation felt like a naughty child getting scolded by their parents instead of a conversation between two people of the same age. Could you go easy on the Keisuke-sama, Yuna dono? He just woke up and is undoubtedly still muddled due to what he went through. Yuna's eyebrows rose as she glanced at Chiyo, who just tried to defend Gaara, causing her to take a step back subconsciously. Yuna stared Chiyo down for a bit longer before her gaze moved back to Gaara, causing his back to straighten, while Chiyo sighed in relief when she no longer felt Yuna's eyes on her. Damn it, I'm much older than her, but she can somehow still stare me down like I'm a child. Sorry Gaara, I won't be able to help you with this situation. Good luck. Naturally, Gaara noticed that Chiyo abandoned him and could feel despair flooding his body. Surprisingly, someone else decided to save him from his current predicament. Look, Nei-san, I found something interesting. Yuna looked towards Naruto and casually caught the purple ring he tossed at her. She inspected it for a while until a broad smile appeared on her face. Oh? So this is how they produce those transparent images they use for communication. Correct, the guy I defeated had a ring like that as well, which is how I managed to enter the conversation you were having with the other Akatsuki members. Yuna nodded her head in interest and, after putting the ring on her left thumb and some probing, injected her chakra into the ring in a specific manner, and moments later, a transparent image of her appeared on one of the fingers of the Gedomazo statue. She cut the connection and her consciousness returned to her original body, making her nod her head in approval. Good stuff. It seems like the Akatsuki members will no longer be able to communicate with each other without us being able to listen in on their conversation. Naruto eagerly nodded his head while showing off the ring he had gotten from Deidara. Ha ha ha, indeed. Additionally, it will be a lot of fun messing with them with this. As soon as Naruto finished speaking, a mischievous smile appeared on his face that was quickly mimicked by Yuna. At the same time, Gaara sighed in relief due to Yuna's attention being drawn away from him, but as if she heard his thoughts, Yuna's gaze landed back on him, making him sweat. Very well, you are off the hook for now, Gaara. But if this happens again, well, let's just say I have some alternative solutions. Following Yuna's creepy chuckle, another shiver went through Gaara's spine while he eagerly nodded his head. From now on, he would always carry Yuna's kunai with him. And so, Gaara was rescued by Yuna, Naruto, Karen, Sakura, and Chiyo from Akatsuki, followed by him getting saved from Yuna by Naruto. As soon as Gaara returned to Suna, tranquility was restored in the village. However, just a few days later, Konoha was plunged into chaos. Chapter 369, just a fun little game. Hiruzen slowly opened his eyes and got up from his bed with a relaxed smile on his face. He didn't get it himself, but his health was getting better and better recently, while his body felt lighter than it ever did before. He slowly walked towards the window and pushed aside the curtain, allowing light to enter his room. This was part of his daily routine. Every morning, he would stand in front of the window and marvel at the Hokage monument. No matter how often he saw his face chiseled into the mountain, he always felt pride swell up. His gaze wandered over the faces of all the Hokage, coughed a little, and then nodded his head with wisdom gleaming in his eyes. Then, he casually swiped away the blood he just coughed out, closed the window, and went back to bed. Well, I'm an old man, so it can't be helped that I occasionally oversleep. Age sure is getting to me, huh? Oh well, good night and have fun, Tsunade. Meanwhile, Tsunade, who had a similar morning routine to Hiruzen, sneezed, causing her to wake up slowly. Just like Hiruzen, she got up from the bed, walked towards her room window, and pushed aside the curtains. But, unlike Hiruzen, her body immediately froze up when she saw the Hokage monument. She started rubbing her eyes in disbelief and gave the monument another glance, but nothing changed no matter how often she did that. It took her quite a while to understand the current situation, and as soon as she did, her fury exploded. I will definitely kill you, Yuna Uzumaki. Currently, the Hokage monument looked quite different from how it usually looked. First of all, the most noticeable change was, without a doubt, what happened to Hashirama's face. Instead of the stern and dignified-looking first Hokage, it was replaced with the head of a giant fox. Younger inhabitants of the village might not know about it, but Tsunade, as the current Hokage, naturally noticed that the head looked precisely like the Kyuubi. Next, the head of the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, was replaced with someone else's head as well. Long spiky hair, sharp facial features, and, to ensure no one got the person's identity wrong, crimson eyes with 3 black tomos surrounding a black dot. It was the head of Madara Uchiha, whose drawn-on Sharingan seemed to pierce into the souls of everyone who looked at it. Hiruzen's head was not exchanged with someone else's and was only modified, unlike the other 4. Now, it looked like his current looks, which meant that it looked much older than it initially did. Additionally, its eyes looked very shifty, while there was a perverted grin on the monument's face. Minado's head was replaced as well, but despite that, it was still very similar to how it usually looked. After all, his head was replaced with Naruto's, who looked somewhat similar to him in the first place. The most significant change was its mouth, which was changed from a calm and composed state to a mischievous grin. And, last but not least, Tsunade's head was replaced with Yuna's, which now had a dignified expression that seemed to look down on everything before it. Tsunade was just about to go berserk when she noticed a letter with the Uzumaki clan symbol lying on her nightstand. She walked towards it and picked it up, hands shaking due to anger coursing through her body. She half expected the letter to be a prank, which would have probably ended in her dying of an aneurysm, but that was luckily not the case, so she started reading the letter, hoping it would give her some form of explanation. Good morning, Tsunade, winky face. Tsunade's hands shook when she saw the winky face Yuna had drawn and almost tore the letter into 1,000 pieces. She knew it was stupid to get angry about something so insignificant, but for some reason, that face seemed to be mocking her. So, after regaining her bearing, she continued reading. As you might have already noticed, Naruto and I did some slight modifications on the Hokage monument. We thought that that would be an excellent way to celebrate Naruto's return to Konoha after his year-long absence. First of all, before you die due to high blood pressure, the changes we made are not permanent. Tsunade's blood pressure was indeed reduced when she read that. She couldn't help but sigh in relief when she realized that she wouldn't have Yuna's monument looking down on her every morning. She would rather straight up destroy the Hokage monument instead. Additionally, she noticed that Naruto was involved in this as well, which surprised her a little. Although Naruto loves pranking people, he usually kept it on a less outrageous level than Yuna. Well, that was at least the case as long as no enemies were involved. Threatening prisoners with another ride in one of Naruto's break arrays has become a rather prominent method for the T&I department to interrogate prisoners. Tsunade shook her head to get rid of her idle thoughts and continued reading the letter. Actually, returning everything back to normal can be done within an instant, and for us to do so, there is only one condition that needs to be fulfilled. Someone needs to reach the top of the Hokage monument, where Naruto and I are waiting. As soon as someone arrives, everything will turn back to normal. Tsunade nodded her head in understanding and was slightly surprised by the almost reasonable condition. Rather than a prank, it's more like a game. However, the last words of the letter quickly changed that impression. Let's play a fun game, Tsunade, smiley face. Shudder. Tsunade shuddered in fear when she saw that seemingly innocent remark. Only now did she realize that neither Yuna nor Naruto had much to do with the term common sense. She already had visions of her shinobi's minds shattering like glass while Yuna and Naruto happily chatter about what a fun game they created. This isn't a simple game, this is a torture game. Right now, Tsunade genuinely regretted that Danzo's route no longer existed. Just look at Sai, he didn't even go through Danzo's whole training program, and he can almost be considered a normal shinobi if you ignore the few dozen quirks, the few weird habits he developed, and the occasional insane cackling. Tsunade was relatively confident that Danzo's mindless puppet would endure whatever Yuna and Naruto had planned much better than an average shinobi at the same level of strength. A deep sigh escaped Tsunade as she stretched her body and walked out of her room with a wry smile on her face. She could already hear a commotion coming from the outside. Sai, today will be a long day. Chapter 370, I'm proud of you. Moments later, hell broke loose in Konoha as Genin, Chunin, and even Jonin tried to reach the top of the Hokage monument due to Tsunade's order. Naturally, she didn't simply order them to charge blindly into whatever Yuna and Naruto had prepared but told them what they would have to expect, explained that it wasn't mandatory to participate, and even made sure to dangle a nice reward in front of their faces so more people would be willing to sacrifice. Join in the mission. Additionally, she tricked persuaded quite a few genin by telling them that this would be excellent training to simulate an actual combat situation. Naturally, she conveniently forgot to mention that it will probably simulate the horrors of war as well. Well, Tsunade decided that experiencing that kind of thing at an early age without actually being in danger should be a good thing. So, Tsunade was currently spectating most of her shinobi forces running up the Hokage monument just to be mercilessly slapped into the face with either a cake or a pie. Naturally, those weren't the only traps laid all over the wall. For example, one of the traps was a seal that, after activation, would glue the person's shoes to the mountain wall, forcing the corresponding shinobi to step out of them. That resulted in dozens of pairs of shoes being stuck to the wall right now. One might question why every single one of them decided to run up the wall instead of going around it and walking through the forest, but the two A and BU who was sitting on the ground next to Tsunade while lightly swaying back and forth made that rather obvious. Whatever was going on in that forest, no one dared to find out. After a few minutes of combat, someone finally snapped and began preparing an earth jetsu, but before he could finish it, he was hit by an especially nasty-smelling liquid while being catapulted away from the mountain at high speed, making the message relatively straightforward: no jetsu allowed. When Tsunade noticed that someone actually wanted to use a big earth jetsu on the Hokage monument and was stopped before he could do so, she sighed in relief. She already committed that person to memory, so she could give him a firm warning not to shoot any big jetsu at Konoha's most significant monument. Coincidentally, Hinata, Anko, Karen, Ino, and Haku were all on different missions throughout the elemental nations. When Tsunade realized this coincidence, she gritted her teeth so hard that they almost shattered. Additionally, she made a mental note to pay more attention to which of those five are out on missions while ensuring it's not all five of them simultaneously. Although Tsunade doubted that Anko or Karen would be the voice of reason in their relationship with Yuna, she still had some hope for Hinata. At the same time, she was confident that Ino and Haku could restrain Naruto at least to some degree. Frankly, when Yuna and Naruto started this event, she had very little hope that anybody would succeed and that most people would give up rather quickly due to frustration or trauma, but morale was boosted from a surprising side. Haha, awesome, this is so much fun, you know. As expected of Yuna-sama and Naruto-sama, these seals are fantastic, you know. Damn straight. I feel like just experiencing this improves my skills with seals, you know. Just a pity they aren't using ramen for this, you know. Fool. Wouldn't that spill all the ramen, you know? Tsunade had no idea how or why, but somehow the Uzumaki clan was having a blast. For some reason, they didn't see the seal array Yuna and Naruto created as a merciless trap of humiliation and degradation, but a masterful piece of art they could marvel at and use as inspiration to improve themselves. Frankly, Tsunade was currently absolutely terrified of them but decided not to comment on their abnormal behavior since their excellent mood seemed to improve the spirit of the other shinobi as well. Meanwhile, Yuna and Naruto were sitting cross-legged on top of their respective changed monument heads, while dozens of screens and thousands of seals were floating around. A wide smile appeared on Naruto's face when he heard his clansmen praising the duo's seals, while he nodded his head in approval at the scolding one of them received for suggesting to use ramen instead. Very good, it seems as that guy gets it, you know. A wry smile appeared on Yuna's face when she heard Naruto's words. Did they infect you with their verbal tick, Naruto? Naruto blushed a little before a small chuckle escaped his mouth. Hee hee, what can I say? I'm in a really great mood right now. Seeing everyone having fun together makes me realize how far we have come since it was just us two. Yuna gave the shinobi, who were cursing up a storm due to walking into prank seals, another glance. Then, she looked at the Uzumaki clan members who were telling everyone who didn't want to hear about it how ingenious those prank seals were and chuckled in amusement. Well, I feel like not all of them are having fun, but whatever. We have indeed come quite far since then. Naruto eagerly nodded his head and adjusted a few seals to counter a new strategy the Uzumaki clan people had just come up with, while Yuna swiped her hands over a few screens to adjust the view before she resumed talking. Well, considering the experience from my past life, it really is no surprise that I reached where I am now, but that is different for you, Naruto. Your growth since you started training is remarkable. No matter the challenge, you pushed through it and never gave up. You made many friends and defeated powerful enemies, and now you have a lot of people adoring you for what you can do. A light blush appeared on Naruto's face when he heard Yuna's words while awkwardly scratching his head without knowing what to say. However, Yuna ignored Naruto's current state of mind and continued talking. I'm proud of you, Naruto. Naruto couldn't help but choke a little when he heard Yuna's words while frantically trying to suppress tears from flowing out of his eyes. It's not like Yuna never praised him before, but it felt significantly more severe than usual this time. While Naruto was still trying to get his emotions under control, a deep sigh escaped Yuna while she theatrically held her head. Sigh, if you were only more ambitious about the size of your harem, Nei-san has failed in her teachings. Naruto almost fell off the Hokage monument when he heard Yuna's follow-up and immediately started glaring at her. That was such a nice moment, was it really necessary to destroy it like that? Yuna wiped a single, non-existent tear of regret out of her eye before she answered Naruto's inquiry. Yes,